have been put in place as a result of a Trade Expansion Act in 1962, which put in a provision for national security and national defense to protect America against abuse in industries and so forth where we needed national defense. The Secretary of Commerce in hearings this last summer completely debunked the trade with Canada being for national defense, the tariffs that went on steel and aluminum. This last week, the president, in his tweets, threatening to impose auto tariffs if, in fact, he doesn't get the NAFTA deal that he's looking for, using Canada in particular in that threat, I think completely goes against the rationale that 232 was put in place for. And Senator Corker worked hard to try to bring notice to that to the Senate. But I'll tell you, I think he's abusing the authority that was given under 232 for his own personal outcomes, whether it's with Turkey or whether it's with Canada or Mexico, to go ahead and go after allies to achieve other goals than national defense. It flies in the face of what this whole legislation was put in place for from the beginning.
Yeah, we've certainly seen outrage by the EU and from, of course, the Canadian government because of 232. There's this sense, though, that once we get a deal between Mexico and the U.S. on autos, everybody's back at the table. There are a couple of key points that it's been pretty clear are going to be sticking issues. If you're advising the Canadian government, do you say it's time to back down on supply management or give up the concern about a sunset clause in this deal?
Look, I would try to find paths to get this deal done, a North American free trade deal. But I think all the impediments to getting it done for the last 2 years, since the president won his election and both Canada and Mexico came to see him in the transition period to say, we are ready to negotiate and update NAFTA. I think that the whole rationale for this not getting done up to this point is the U.S. keeps putting in roadblocks that are no-go zones. I think a sunset clause makes no sense whatsoever. I think businesses in the United States would never invest for the long term based on a 5-year sunset provision. And I will tell you, without a dispute resolution based on Chapter 19, I think companies and countries will be at a significant disadvantage. There are paths to success here, and there's give and take. We saw in TPP negotiations that the Canadians gave additional access to dairy. So we know there's room there without even getting rid of supply management overall. But everybody should remember, prior to June the 1st, when the U.S. put in steel and aluminum tariffs with Canada, 99+% of all trade with Canada was tariff-free, duty-free. And so the president making these points on dairy, which is less than 0.5% of the trade with Canada, and using that as a touch point, I think is just a ruse. I don't know he's demonstrated yet that he really wants a NAFTA deal.
On Section 232, some senators right now are looking to send the authority over Section 232 to the Defense Department. Does that make more sense to you?
There should be negotiation with the Defense Department if you're talking about this being a risk to national defense. I think that was the intent of everything that I've read back when this legislation was first put in place. And I think having that more specifically laid out is not a bad thing. I think that, you know, just because the president is mad that they haven't released a prisoner, an American prisoner in Turkey, to double the tariffs on steel and aluminum when actual sales of steel and aluminum from Turkey have plummeted this year, demonstrate he's not using it for national defense. He's using it for hostile acts to achieve goals. And I think the Senate needs to get involved right away.
Well, I guess also my question is, when should Congress step in here? When and how should Congress step in here to try to get a deal done?
Well, if the president goes to taxing automobiles and auto parts, we are going to have a bridge too far, I think. And I think that we've seen from the auto industry, from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, from governors, from senators and congressmen, from business leaders, from our allies, that this would be damaging all across the board. So I think that if he crosses that line, I think the Senate needs to take hold of this right away.